I'm very excited for this workshop, as I'm sure all of you are. I am honored to introduce my mom, Rachel, and I'm just gonna read a little bit about her to introduce her. Rachel's personal journey as a recovering perfectionist inspired her to create Stepping Into More, a professional and personal development company dedicated to supporting clients to identify their GPS, natural gifts, passions, and where they like to be in service, in order to unearth and honor their true north, activities where the three components intersect. Prior to launching Stepping Into More, highlights from Rachel's corporate experience include Human Resources Manager at EMI Music Distribution and Manager of Organization Development and Training at Easton Sports. Rachel earned an MS in Counseling for Business, achieved her coaching credential through the International Coaching Federation, and is a certified strengths coach. Rachel is a past president for the ICF Los Angeles chapter and currently serves as executive advisor on the board of directors. Rachel serves as the co-leader for the International Coaching Federation virtual community, Coaching and Human Capital Community of Practice. Rachel is the author of Stepping Into More, Lessons from a Recovering Perfectionist, and the producer of the accompanying CD, Stepping Into More. Rachel is proud and delighted to be married for 30 years and to be called mom by her two top teachers, her children, me included. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Rachel.
Well, thank you for that lovely introduction, Talia. And thank you, Sheila, for that entertaining joke at this time in the afternoon. That was very nice. And such a delight and honor to be here with all of you. Talia tells me so much about your programming, and it's just really a joy to be able to support your community. So as Talia was mentioning, part of my background many years ago was in human resources. And I used to work at companies like EMI Music Distribution, where I supported them with a large reorganization and layoff. I facilitated what's called survivor training with employees that were left after layoffs. And currently, one of the things that I support leaders with is helping them move others through change. And inevitably, one of those leaders will say something like, well, how do I help support other people move through change when I'm really struggling with it myself? And this is when the concept of resilience through change is really, really important. And when we think about what's happening with us right now with COVID-19, that's a lot of change that we're needing to navigate. And so we're going to focus today on this idea of resilience. And I'm going to share my slide with you. Can everybody see that? Great, I see your nods. So this idea of resilience, as you see here, is being able to recover from or adjust easily to change. How do we thrive when we're in the midst of change? And if you think technically of resilience, it's being able to bounce back, right? And so what we're going to do today is really focus on resilience and specifically focus on one aspect of resilience. The work that I've done over the years and hearing leaders say, I'm struggling going through change myself, led me to come up and create an assessment called a self-resilience indicator. And that assessment looks at 8 facets of resilience. And we're going to focus today on this first facet of self-awareness. And this is foundational to all of the other aspects of resilience, right? Without self-awareness, we really can't do very much. And when I think about your community at High Village and being older adults, this idea of resilience is super important because I'm sure for most of you, you're used to being in service to others, to your family, to your friends, and your corporate life, for those of you that worked. And so it might not come as easily for you to be able to give yourselves some self-care, some nurturing, and to really focus on yourselves. And so that is going to be our journey together today, is to give you an opportunity to really focus on yourself, to exhibit some self-care, and to expand this idea of self-awareness as it pertains to being resilient. And so when you think about any change model that's out there, inevitably that first phase of change is filled with emotion. Some people call that first phase of change disorientation or chaos. And the reason there's a lot of emotion is because we feel like we've lost control. By the way, some people really thrive on change, and they too will exhibit strong emotion. So whether it's emotion of happiness, excitement, or fear or anxiety, there's always going to be a lot of emotion when change comes our way. And so it's really important, as we're thinking about how to lead ourselves through change, that we're able to really work through those emotions, that phase of disorientation or chaos, instead of trying to push those feelings away or pretend like they're not there. Instead, how do we work through those feelings? And also, how do we engage in this change that's happening right now? Because the minute we engage in it, the minute we feel like we have some control and we're more in charge. So with that, I am going to, let's talk a little bit about what we mean by self-awareness. And you'll see on the screen, there's a definition here. And basically, somebody who has a strength in being self-aware when it comes to being resilient is able to take accountability for dealing with transitions, recognizing that it's not going to help them to blame other people, that they have enough self-awareness to really understand their personal values, their emotions, their thoughts, their strengths, their development areas, and they use that awareness to be able to manage themselves as well as manage relationships with others. And this last bullet here is very important. For people that are self-aware when it comes to resilience, they know where to focus on what they can control instead of spending energy and time on things that are out of their control. And this is really key, and this is where we're going to hone in today. Is I'm going to introduce you to an activity around this idea of control and influence and no control. And this is an exercise that I use with my clients, especially in the newer stages of change. And what we're going to do is I'm going to talk you through this exercise. You're going to have a chance to do this on your own. And then we're going to get you into breakout rooms with your friends, and you're going to have a chance to talk about what insights came up for you during the exercise. And then we're going to bring you back, and we're going to get a chance to hear what was going on in your discussions. So that is where we are headed. And the first thing I'd like to invite you to do is, if you could please go ahead and either on a piece of paper or on your computer screen, if you could draw 3 columns. And those columns, as you'll see up on the slide here, is what are things that are out of your control? What are things that you can influence? And what are items or activities that you can control? And so what I'd like to invite you to do is to, first of all, take a couple of, like I like to joke and say, introverted minutes on your own, and to think about your reality today with this situation with COVID-19, and to really consider, okay, what is completely out of my control? What might I be able to influence? And what can I truly control in this situation? So I'm going to give you a couple minutes on your own to jot some notes. Whatever comes to mind is terrific. So go ahead, please, and begin.
Can I ask a question?
Certainly.
Could you give an example of something you could influence rather than control?
We're actually going to walk through all three columns in just a moment, and I'd be happy to share examples of all of these. So hold tight.
I meant to say at the beginning, if anyone has a question, you can use the chat box. If you don't know how to get to the chat box, if you're on a computer, it'll be towards the bottom of the screen, one of the buttons. Or you can unmute yourself if it's a good time.
And we'll give you just about 30 more seconds here. Terrific. So wherever you're at is just fine. Go ahead and finish up that last thought for right now. And we're going to go through these one by one, and then you'll have a chance to talk in your groups. So first of all, let's start with this idea of no control. So some of the things that came to mind for me when I was thinking of what I cannot control currently, number one is this virus, right? Obviously, we have no control over that. On a personal front, in my world as a coach and a facilitator, if my clients cancel, I really can't control that. The fact that our economy is not doing well, that businesses are closing, all of these things are completely out of my control. And the thing that I like to emphasize when it comes to items that are out of our control, as much as possible, to not focus our attention and energy here. I don't know about you, but in the past, I have spent way too much time and energy on things that are out of my control, and it doesn't serve me. It doesn't serve us because there's nothing we can do. We're much better served in considering items that we can influence and items that we can control. And usually when we think of items that are out of our control, they're pretty straightforward. And sometimes our like knee-jerk reaction in thinking something is out of our control, we might be able to influence it more than we realize at first. So let's talk a little bit about this idea of influencing. And influencing, going back to Talia's question, is really those items where we can try to influence, try to move people in another direction, but ultimately we can't control them. So we can only do our best to influence. So I'd like to utilize the chat box for a moment. As Taya was mentioning, you should be able to find that on the bottom of your screen. You might see a button that says more with 3 dots. And if you click on that, it will also show the chat feature. And I just like to hear on the chat box, what were some items that originally came to mind when you thought of, what can I influence in this situation? So let's see what we got. I'll give you a moment to type in the chat box. Social distancing, yes, Paul, absolutely. What else can we influence? All right, I can cheer people up, be supportive of my kids and grandkids, wearing masks, family, making suggestions, staying close to my children, the village, absolutely. Helping others be strong. The governor tell us how to improve on our health situation by maintaining social distancing. These are terrific examples. Yes, so you're all on the right track here, and I'll share once again a couple of things that came to mind for me as I was thinking about this question. So the fact that we're talking here today is due to my influence. I originally actually have been facilitating similar workshops for the coaching association that I'm on the board of directors for in Los Angeles. And as a result of that, I was asked by the same association in Toronto, and now I was asked to do it in Puerto Rico. And Taya heard about it and asked, hey, will you come to High Village? So all of that was something within my influence because I raised my hand and said, hey, I'd like to be in support in this way. I also can help my clients with this activity that we're going through, as well as other tools that I have. So these are a couple of examples of influence. So with this, I want to talk now a little bit today about this idea of control. When it comes to our current situation with COVID-19 and everything we're experiencing, what can we truly control? So once again, I'd love for you to utilize that chat box as you did so beautifully, and let us know, what are some things that are truly in your control right now? All right, washing my hands, activities, our attitudes, absolutely. Exercising, cooking, communicating with family around the planet, wearing masks, reading. Yes, a lot of reading where I walk, my perspective and attitude, absolutely. Being grateful, having fun on the phone, your income. Wonderful, connecting by phone. Lovely examples. Yes, and if you notice, whoops, I didn't mean to go there yet. If you notice, actually I did. Many of the items that you put here are all about you, right? When you think in life, who and what we actually control, it's us. It's our attitude, it's our beliefs, it's our actions. It's that simple and it's that hard, right? It sounds simple in theory, but not always so easy in practice. And you'll see in my examples here, very similar to many of yours, being intentional with my mindset is something I can control, and also creating some kind of routine that includes self-care. I meditate regularly, I'm exercising regularly. So creating that structure and routine has been something very helpful for me as well. And I'm going to share a quote for you from Viktor Frankl, who I'm sure many of you have read Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. And if any of you aren't familiar with Viktor Frankl, he was a psychiatrist who survived the Holocaust. And what he wrote was this: We who lived in concentration camps can remember the men who walked through the huts comforting others, giving away their last piece of bread. They may have been few in numbers, but they offer sufficient proof that everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. Pretty powerful.
It's fitting. Today's Yom HaShoah.
Thank you for that reminder. Yes, it is Yom HaShoah. Yeah, wow, thank you. So I want to pause here for a moment now that you've had a chance to start considering what currently is out of your control, what can you influence, and what you can control. And I want to give you an opportunity to talk through what's coming up for you, first with your breakout groups, and then we'll do a debrief and hear what came up in your conversations. So the way that this will work in just a little bit, I'm going to get you into hopefully groups of approximately 4. The first thing that I'd like to ask you to please do when you get into your groups is to choose a spokesperson. And this spokesperson will be listening for themes that they're hearing in the conversation so that when we come back as a large group, they can share. And just to have some fun with this, I'll ask that you check with the people in your group and see who has been a High Village member the longest. And whoever's been a High Village member the longest, if you could please have them be your spokesperson, that would be terrific. And then once you get into your conversations, you have some options about what you can talk about. So one idea, as it says on the screen here, is maybe share what came to mind when you thought of things that you can control or things that you can influence. Another idea would be to share any possible struggles you might be having when it comes to things that are out of your control. Maybe even though you recognize it's out of your control, it might not be so easy to let it go. So this is a safe space for you to be sharing with like-minded friends and getting support from each other. So I want to invite you just to be authentic and vulnerable with each other as you're sharing. And I'll be floating around between the groups to make sure that you're good and you don't have any questions as we're going through. And then we'll come together as the large group and I'll ask for those spokespeople to raise their hands and share some of the conversation that came out. And we're going to take, let's see, what time are we at? 4:28. Yeah, so we're going to take about 16 minutes for your conversation. So you'll have a nice amount of time to really talk to each other. And before I create those breakout rooms, just want to check in and see if there are any questions before we begin. You can either put it in the chat box or raise your hand. And Taya, let me know if you're seeing any hands come up. All right, it looks like we're in good shape then. Terrific.
Hold on.
Oh,
Barbara Meltzer. I'm trying to unmute you. Hold on.
Thank you.
Barbara, could you unmute yourself? Or press down the space bar.
Okay.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, there's something wrong with my computer, so I'm going to leave and then come back, okay? So it's just not showing everything right now. So I'm going to sign off and then I'm going to sign in again.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll look out for you in the
I
waiting
think
room.
Faye had her hand up. Talia, Faye had her hand up.
Faye. Where are you, Faye? I'm flipping through. Hold on.
Oh, I got it. Okay.
Oh, you got it.
I'm back. Okay.
Faye, do you have your
Yes.
hand up? Oh, there you are. Your video's gone. Go ahead.
I'm not on the screen. My face is not on the screen like it was. And I had my hand up and I wanted to share something and it didn't happen about control.
Go ahead.
So can you see me though? Can you see me? Because I'm not on the screen my
We
face.
can't see you, but we can hear you perfectly.
But I
So
pressed everything. I mean, I want to see people. I can see you. Well, just regarding control, I put like basically other people. I've learned in my long life of 85 years that I really don't have a lot of control over others, that the only person I can really control, I mean, there's variables, obviously, that is myself. So I've certainly learned that in many hard ways over a lot of good and bad experiences. And there goes my telephone ringing right now. Things.
okay,
So
Faith,
anyway,
Thank you.
Faith, feel free to share more in your breakout group. So ready?
So yes, if we could, Talia's going to create the breakout groups. And like I said, I'll be coming around and making sure everyone's doing well. So I hope you enjoy your conversations.
Oh, amazing. Diane, do you see something on your screen asking you to join a breakout room? Hold on.
So what do I do?
Do you see
Oh,
something
okay,
asking?
yes, join.
Okay, go ahead. That's Lorna's sister.
Oh, I could some of your conversations and hearing some of your rich discussions. And as we mentioned, what we'll do now is give you an opportunity to share what were some of the themes that you are noticing in your conversations. And if we could have any of the spokespeople who were volunteered for that role, please raise your hand and then we will unmute you. So I saw Barbara's hand first. So I'll go ahead.
Hi.
Barbara, please tell us what was going on.
Well, so much of it was the same. It was really exciting that people are taking the time to learn new things. They have this is a wonderful time, not just to sit back, but to really learn new things, to also learn more about ourselves. There's a lot of self-reflection going on, and who am I, and who do I want to be, and what can I learn now? Giving back to others. It's a wonderful time wherever you can to give back to others, and they're just finding self-reflection and another discovering or the attitude is no more shoulds. I'm going to do what I want. Mm-hmm. I've lost all my shoulds. They're gone. So self-reflection and learning new things, I think, exploring.
Beautiful. And I love the no shoulds. I find that we often should on ourselves, and Talia was snapping in case you didn't see, affirming that. So beautiful. And yeah, such an opportunity for learning, growth, and to be in service to others. Mm-hmm. Is so important for our well-being at a time like this. Right. Thank you, Barbara. Who else would like to share? I see, another Barbara. Let's go ahead and unmute you. You're on, Barbara.
Okay, in our group, we talked, I just recently got assigned as the spokesperson, so I didn't take any notes. One of the things we talked about was what is going to come after, and what is the world going to look like after. We felt that that many institutions are worried about that, and are worried about losing support and losing members, etc. Not High Village in particular, but other institutions. We talked about, I think the people in our group felt pretty grateful that we are not worried about financial concerns. And we talked about how I think young families are more concerned about that. I think a lot of people in our age group have different worries that we might be focusing on. What else did we talk about? I don't know. Terry, come on, help me with this one.
Do you want to help her out, Terry? Where are you?
Two of the three of us are with our families during this period, our children. We're able to see our children. So that feels very nice. We're not suffering being lonely in our homes and distant from our children and not being able to see them.
And we all made a very conscious decision several weeks ago to take this course to allow us to have contact with our family, which we paid a price to do that, but it's a price that we're willing to pay.
And the third person is expecting a grandchild, and the in-law took the time to quarantine so she could be with the children. So there was a lot of gratitude about being able to be families, larger families than just what was in our household.
One of the things that I expressed was I can be a cheerleader for my daughter and a cheerleader for friends, but I can't be, it's harder to be a cheerleader for myself and to keep myself in higher spirits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I appreciate that challenge, Barbara. And I'm also curious, what have you found that can help bring some more joy to you when you're experiencing any kind of lull?
Go to sleep and hopefully wake up the next morning and it'll feel different. But usually what happens is that radio is still playing I Got You, Babe, and it's Groundhog Day all over again, and and that's kind of hard.
Barbara, would you say art brings you some joy, or quilting?
Yes,
or...
art brings me joy. I'm finding it difficult to focus on art, but I do, and I'm making masks for people, and that I feel at least useful, and that's a good feeling.
And the village that I think we've all had a hand in.
Absolutely. We all talked about that too.
Just to have one or two programs every day to look forward to online to help break up the day and have some contact with human beings. And I think one of the reasons that we're all part of a village and part of a synagogue is that we want to have a community in our life, and we've lost that. We're a people that like being around people. We're a people who like touching people, and we can't do that now, and that's been a challenge for us.
Yes, and if I could just comment on a few of those really important things that you've shared. So first of all, innovation is something that's really happening at this time. Just the fact that we're meeting like this. So even though you prefer to be close and to be able to hug and say hello, every group I was in mentioned how wonderful it is that very quickly we are able to come up with technology and to meet in a new way. So every person, every business has been forced to rethink how they do things, why they do things, what they do, and sort of the silver lining is there is going to be continued innovations, improvements, things that we'll do differently that we never would have really thought about unless forced to in this type of situation. The other point I wanted to bring out that Barbara mentioned, our second Barbara, around self-care. This is such an important time in any way that you can be caring and nurturing toward yourself, whether that's physically, mentally, emotionally. And sometimes when we're having a crappy day, just to remember like, oh yeah, I'm going through this massive change. This is really hard. And being gentle with ourselves and just allowing ourselves to feel what it is that we feel without trying to judge it or to push the feelings away. So this is, something I really invite you to consider. How can you be in good service to yourself, making sure you are getting enough sleep, that you're eating properly, If you're having strong emotions, one activity I find very helpful, I call it freeform journaling, allowing myself just to write whatever is on my mind and just keep writing, even if you're just scribbling until you feel more neutral. And then when you're done, destroy the paper. You can burn it, you can tear it, you could shred it, but the idea is allow feelings to come through and out instead of trying to push them away. Because as you all know, when we do that, either at some point we're going to get an ulcer or they're going to explode. So what can we do to give ourselves permission to feel? Another thing that's been super helpful for me always, but especially now, is called breath meditation. Breath work, if you're not familiar with it, is specifically designed to allow you to let your breath go and go and go, and it brings up all kinds of emotions. So if that's something of interest, there are meditation centers that are doing virtual meditation. You don't have to go anywhere, and is extremely powerful. Unplug Meditation, by the way, is a center in LA, unplugmeditation.com, and they have virtual meditation classes all day long. Great, I'd love to hear from one more group. Who would like to share with us? Oh, Lorna, okay. Lorna, you're muted.
So in our group, we pretty much, most people feel that they are taking some steps to influence people, you know, others, maybe by a lot of supportive calls, a lot of engaging with people and friends on a daily basis, and also influencing their own health by, you know, exercise, talked about yoga, talked about managing their own health and anxieties in that way. But our group sort of felt there was a high level, I think, of anxiety felt by most of the people, especially about not today and not tomorrow, but what will be come October and December, and to what extent how will our lives look, and how will we manage, and how will we navigate that new world, and especially given that we are in the demographic that is the most vulnerable. And so one of the things we talked about is, you know, the possibility of finding, I know that it would help us all if we knew that there was either a really effective treatment or a vaccine, and maybe we could actively support the organizations that are doing research with donations or money. And maybe, I don't think it's going to bring the ultimate cure, but we could feel better about the fact that we are trying to influence that. But you know, I think everybody in our group is doing just like other people do, taking care of themselves on a daily basis, supporting others within their community, and keeping busy as much as they can. But right there in the very back is this nagging anxiety. I'm 70-something, and I'm in that dangerous demographic, and you know, what is my life going to be like in December?
So Lorna, thank you so much for sharing. I saw a lot of nods as you were sharing. And I want to call out that I really appreciated how you started by mentioning things that are out of your control, right? That future anxiety is very much out of your control, and how quickly you moved into influencing. And how, okay, if there are organizations I could support in helping to find a vaccine or to get testing out, how can I contribute in that way? And that's a beautiful example of influencing. So it's quite natural that our mind only wants to think forward and back. It's not present. So it's very natural and normal for us to have that kind of future anxiety. And the key is catching it and going, that's something out of my control. So what is something right now I can either influence, or how can I work with myself to work through those emotions to bring me back to that more neutral space, because I can control myself. So thank you so much for sharing, Lorna. And we have just a little bit of time left, and I am a big believer that the universe rewards action. And even if it's a small action, And I'm also a big believer in baby steps. So what I'd like us to do with the remaining time we have is, now that you've sat with this idea of things that are out of your control, what can you influence and what can you control? What might be one baby step action, something really small that you can take in the next week? And something to consider here is that it could be an action like a doing, or it could be more around an intention. Who do you want to be during this time? So for example, like we've been talking a little bit about exercise. So perhaps you might set a goal for the next week to be able to walk for at least 20 minutes, at least 3 times a week. So that would be an example of doing. And more on the intention side, you can consider, like, how do I want to show up? What qualities do I want to exhibit? So for example, you might set an intention around being in gratitude. Perhaps every morning, this is something I do every morning, and before I go to sleep, what do I appreciate? What is working well in my life? Or maybe this week, I really want to focus on being kind to other people. So I'd like you to take a moment and jot that down for yourself. And if you could, please, on the chat box as well, go ahead and write out what is one small either action or intention that you would like to hone in on for this coming week. We'll pull up the chat box here. Thanks for putting the question up, Talia. Calling friends and relatives who are alone, very nice. Going on more walks. What else? Finding an exercise room and cleaning the living room. An exercise class, sorry. Taking a short on, what is, with a B, I'm not sure what that says, Martha.
Taking a short walk on the block.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No problem. Great idea. Who else has some ideas? Review your notes in a few days so you can keep your perspective. Terrific idea. And now that you've talked with these other people, you can reach out to them and see how they're doing after your conversation. Scheduling time to read, pause more, absolutely. Give some donations to organizations, take a meditation class. These are fantastic. Yes, so I'm going to pause here for a moment. And I really want to invite you to follow through on whatever goal or intention you just set for yourself. Even if it's a small action, you're going to feel really good about keeping that commitment to yourself, which will hopefully give you an appetite to keep taking small actions. I'm a big believer in weekly planning. It's a way to really be very intentional with what we're doing and who we're being each week. So this is something that could be super helpful. And I also want to just thank you for the wonderful discussion and your attention. You'll see here on the screen, I have my contact information here, as well as information about the resilience assessment I was mentioning. If that's something you're interested in exploring, you can find that on my website. And just such a delight to get to meet so many of you today. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Talia and to Devorah.
Hey, Rachel, this is Terry. Before you turn it back over, I would just like to say on behalf of the village, number one, thank you for today. I thought it was wonderful and you were terrific. But what I really want to say to you is that your daughter has been the greatest gift that we've all gotten for the village. And we just love her and think that she's been amazing and a tremendous help and an asset to all of us. So thank you for that.
Thank you. A few of you have mentioned Talia, and I'm going to get teary. I'm filling. So I'm just so delighted that she's with all of you in support of you, and I know she loves you all so much. So thank you. I'm really glad that you're appreciative as well.
I learned from the best.